Everybody, and welcome into the 53rd edition of Texas Longhorns Live. I'm your host, Matthew Miller, joined by my co-host, Gerald. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps us build this channel. We really appreciate you guys being here each and every Monday night. Let's talk about this. Texas lands Yaheem Riley going to the Longhorns, 3-star safety from Austin, so stays in town and actually went to the same high school as Andrew Makuba did. Now he's going to a different high school this year. But what do you think about Yaheem Riley joining Texas, Gerald?
Yeah, it was an interesting take on the surface. I was interested to see and get in his tape and watch. He's a little bit smaller than I think you typically see Texas take at a safety, right? Depending on the site, he's like either 5'11" or 6 foot, depending on which site you prefer. But like the things that jump out to me about him is one, highly productive defender, right? Going to end up being a 3-year starter on varsity, right? Played 2 years for LBJ, and now he's transferring to a different high school, right? In his sophomore and junior years, he had more than 150 tackles, 9 for loss, 2 sacks, 7 interceptions, massive numbers, massive productions. He's also got really good instinct and really good ball skills. Like he plays a lot of man coverage for them, and you see him kind of creep down to the slot. And so this is going to be my controversial take. He almost seems like a Jahdae Barron like starter set based upon like watching his tape. Like I get a lot of Jahdae Barron's like movement and a lot of the way that he recognizes the ball and kind of uses his physicality to his advantage. I'm not saying he's going to reach those heights or he's going to have that level of projection, but when you look at what Texas likes from a skill set perspective in that like kind of slot defender position, like he's got what they like on tape. Again, can it translate to the next level? Only time will tell, but I really liked his junior tape and kind of what he did in coverage, specifically in that slot position.
Yeah, so going back to what you saw on tape and then where he's ranked, yeah, he's the 775th recruit on the composite of 247. So yeah, you look at that, and that might be one of the lowest players we've had recruited under the Steve Sarkisian era. It's got to be pretty close. 67th safety. And I agree. Like when you look at, if you just looked at the production and didn't look at the stars and look at the tape, you would think, oh, this guy should be like a 4 or 5-star recruit. But then you do have to look at, I think the tape matched that as well. But then you look at the measurables, you're right. He's small. He's 5'11", 185 pounds. That's not really a safety. I agree with you. I think he translates way more to the slot in college, unless he has like a gigantic growth spurt and he ends up being 6'2", 6'3", because we'll talk about other guys in the recruiting class down the road, and they're bigger. They're way bigger. Chase Calcutt is one of those guys we'll talk about, and he's 6'3". So for this guy to be 5'11", 185, definitely a smaller guy, but I agree with you. He does play a little bit bigger than that, and he's definitely a good athlete overall. So I think he can translate to the slot, and I think we're going to be able to keep him in this class as well. That's something I think Texas also looks at too, is like, hey, this guy's kind of lower ranked. He's from Austin. We think we can work with what he's got, especially on tape. So I think this is a really good get for Texas. And we talk about versatility. There's a chance, he might be able to be a little bit more versatile than we think he can be, where we just kind of see him as slot. Maybe he can play safety. Maybe he can play outside. We'll have to see, but I see a slot player, honestly. I agree with you.
Yeah, it screamed slot to me as I watched him. Just the way that he like breaks on balls, the way that he uses, especially in coverage, like using his body physically, like the physicality of it, playing man coverage and in that slot role specifically. And in the SEC, that's what is needed in that role. And I think those are the things that made like guys like Jahdae Barron or Jalen Gilbo really good in that spot. And so again, that's just what jumped out to me when I looked at the tape. Like it really feels very similar to watching. And again, Jahdae Barron had a much higher level of esteem coming in, and obviously turned out to be one of, if not the best cornerbacks of the last 5 years in college football, right? But ultimately, like that's the skill set I see from him, and I think that's what Texas sees in him, or at least I would assume that's what Texas sees in him. I don't honestly think that they're like looking at the recruiting rankings or they're concerned. Like they got tape from a kid that's in their backyard, right? He maybe came to a camp, they watched him, and he turned out to play really well. And like again, the tape to me screams a kid who can be really productive as a slot defender.
No, I agree. So last year, 80 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, and then he also had a punt return for a touchdown. So I think the staff looks at that too. Like if they just think he can be a really, really good special teams player, this is worth a spot on the roster. You also have to take into account now, guys, rosters are going to expand at some point. There's already been talk of 15 people on a roster.
Yeah.
Basically, I think you're going to see that come down the pipeline at some point and become official. So you can actually kind of do what the NFL does, which they have guys specifically for special teams. Well, guess what? In college now, at some point, you're probably going to have the same thing. So maybe they just see him as a full-time special teams player. And I have nothing wrong with that either, because we struggled on special teams this year, and we could use like a Keelan Robinson or someone like that on special teams, a Keaton Crawford, who was phenomenal on special teams. So that'd be really awesome if we can get that. This guy also was offered by Ole Miss. Vandy wanted to visit. He was committed to Houston. So there were still some pretty good football programs looking at this guy as well. And I think you have to take that into account as well.
Yeah, you look at the offer list, you look at where he's going to end up and where he's heading, and I think that again, I can't say this enough. I trust the coaches on the eval, right? I trust the coaches on the way that they're evaluating and looking at the tape. Again, and he's probably in for a little bit of a growth spurt, right? I think I put on another inch in college, right, after high school. So he might end up at a legit 6 foot or 6'1", again, depending on which site you're subscribed to. But again, I think Texas is and they're in a position where they can take some of these guys that have a lot of traits, but maybe need some more development, because they've recruited really well at safety over the last couple of classes. And they probably will recruit really well at it again in this cycle as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be more guys drafted. So Andrew McCoobie getting drafted this time. Next year, if Derek Williams has a really good year, he could be getting drafted. Michael Taft could be getting drafted. So DBU kind of headed back the right way. And especially with Dwayne Akina coming back as well. I mean, all these things help to where I agree. I think the secondary room can start to take off. It's already gotten a lot better in the last couple of years, but I could see it even hit another level. So I do like this kid. I think he's going to be a player for Texas down the road at some point. Obviously not a guy that I come in and expect to play right away in the slot. If he does that, then he has wildly exceeded expectations, but a guy in 2 years that definitely could do that.
Absolutely. Again, I think Texas has a Swiss Army knife on their hands, and I'm excited to see where he ends up.
I am as well. Now, let's talk about this, because a bunch of guys, this is this time of the year where guys are releasing their top threes, their top fives, their top tens. Now, if you're releasing any more in the top 10, I think it's a waste of time. That's my opinion on that. When I see guys, I saw a top like 15. I'm like, okay, you didn't really narrow anything down here. You kind of just took your best offers and threw them in there. So we got to stick to top 10s at most.
Before they put a clamp on, or before they took the clamps off of how many visits that you could take, I really only paid attention to like top threes or top fours, because like you're not going to visit all the schools in your top 10, right? So like, who cares? But yes, we're excited for these kids.
Yeah, so we'll go down this list. Zayden Krempin listed Texas in, I believe, his top 7. Valdon Stone, this is a guy that I was really high on because of where he's from Virginia. We talked about that. We're expanding the recruiting map. We haven't landed a Virginia kid in a while. The DMV area, I think, is really hot. And this is a guy that's really, really raw. We'll talk about him. Mark Bowman, the 5-star tight end from California, also released, I believe, a top 7. And then Samuel Rosenborough, there's whispers around that he could kind of be silently committed already to Texas from Florida. And then I'll throw this guy in here. He actually just talked about it today, where he's going to visit Texas. He canceled his Florida State visit. He's listed as an athlete, but he wants to play defensive line, but he plays offensive line in high school, Lamar Brown. So we'll see what happens there. But let's jump into this, and we'll just go one by one. Zayden Krempin, offensive tackle from Texas, 4-star, 267 nationally, 6'4", 270 pounds. What do you like about him, Gerald?
Yeah, I looked at his measurables and I watched his tape, and I wonder if Texas honestly sees him on the inside, right? He's listed as a tackle on most services, but he looks like a guard to me, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a compliment, right? I think he's got a lot of the skill sets that you need to be a successful guard in college. He's a big kid, still 6'4", 270, but when you look at the profiles that Texas is recruiting at tackle, that weight is usually somewhere in the range of like 300, right? So I wonder if he's a guard for Texas. And again, Texas is looking to have a pretty deep and a pretty well-rounded offensive line class. So I imagine you're going to have multiple interior linemen in here, and I think he's probably one of them. I really like his skill set. I also love getting a kid out of Prosper. I feel like Prosper has not been super friendly to Texas in recent memory. Maybe I'm just an old head, right? But getting a guy from the DFW area, keeping those hooks in the DFW. And again, if you look at the offer sheet, right? Michigan wants him. Michigan knows what they're doing at offensive line, right? A&M, I hate to say it, they know what they're doing in the trenches, right? LSU knows what they're doing in the trenches. SMU is probably throwing a bag at him, right? He's a local kid. kid, wanting to get him on campus and on the up and up. So again, I think he's a highly coveted kid. He's got measurables that make me think he probably slides inside when he gets to Austin. And that's a good thing because I really think he's got a skill set that can advance pretty quickly.
No, I don't disagree with that. And I agree. Like, that's the first thing I noticed too. I think he's inside guy. I don't think he's an outside guy, but I will say this. Again, versatility. I think they want one or two guys that can kind of be tweeners. And that's someone that can, if injury happens, you want to keep your five best on the field, you slide that guy to the outside. I could see that with this guy. Wouldn't shock me at all if he's the one or two of those guys on the board of, hey, this guy can play inside and outside. They want, like I said, positional versatility. And we've seen Kyle Flood talk about this. He said, I want my five best on the field. I don't really care about the positions. So if you can get a guy like this in your room and mold him to play inside and outside, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and again, positional versatility, a guy who can, like you said, when you want to have your best five guys on the field, doesn't really matter what I say. Doesn't really matter. Probably center is the one that I have specific questions about, right? You probably don't want to just slot anybody in there. But again, I think Kyle Flood knows what he's doing. He's forgotten more about recruiting offensive line than I'll ever know. But again, I really do wonder. Listed as a tackle, I really think he slides inside for Texas predominantly. But again, a guy who can kick out and play that offensive tackle position if you need him, nothing to sneeze at.
No, not at all. Next up, this is my guy. I've stamped it. I want him. I've wanted him for like a month and a half now. Valden Stone from Virginia, 4-star. He's 174 in the nation. If you go to 247, though, I think he's in the top 50. And I like 247. I think 247 is the best recruiting service. So if you guys just want to go based off that, that's fine. But I try to be fair and do composite. This guy, I want him for this reason mainly. Has only played football a couple of years. He's from Germany, came over. I love guys like this. That's why I'm a big fan of Smith the Robo. When you see them on the field and they're already like, they're basically, they don't know what they're doing. They're kind of running around with their chicken with their head cut off, but they're being able to make plays. And he's a big guy as well. So this is someone that I think if we coach him up right, he would be a 5-star guy. Like, we could take him up a star just by coaching because he's already got the frame. That's why he's ranked so high. So I would love to get this guy for that reason, number one. Number two, I want this guy to expand that map, to make this for Texas, be able to go from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. East Coast is starting to come along. There's another guy in here that we'll talk about from New Jersey. So I think this would be a really, really good get for Texas if they can get him. And the reason I have him in offensive, there's talk, and I think he did play offensive line a little bit, but he's seen as a defensive lineman in this class.
Yeah, I think he probably fits more of the bill of what Texas is recruiting at that defensive line position, like 6'3", 315, 320. I shouldn't remember off the top of my head, but right. It's like he fits that bill of what Texas likes at that interior guy. Very athletic, quick on his feet. I think he ran like a 4.5 or 4.6 shuttle at a combine, so like quicker than he probably should be, and really what you like to see from your defensive lineman, your interior guys. I don't think he has a Texas visit scheduled yet, but getting in that top group even is big for them. And like you said, expanding that recruiting footprint. Texas is a national recruiting brand at this point. Like they've always been, but I think they're really trying to flex that muscle a bit. So getting into the DMV makes a lot of really good defenders. Like, there's no two ways around it. Like, especially linebackers, the state of Texas doesn't produce a ton of elite linebackers. We don't see them. They're few and far between. That's why a guy like Anthony Hill was a big win for Texas. So having the opportunity to say, when they come in state, we're going to grab them, but we also have a pipeline to the places that make them, Virginia, Georgia is another one. We'll talk about a Georgia recruit here in just a couple minutes. I think Valden Stone ends up on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's probably where his biggest upside is. He just fits that mold of, like, you put him in the middle of the defense, he eats up two gaps, and the linebackers have a field day. And I really love that about his game.
I completely agree. Let's talk about this guy because I think there's an argument to be made that this is the best player Texas could land in the class, and that is Mark Bowman. This is a guy that reclassified, and he's already, like I said, he was a 4-star when we talked about him last time. He's already a 5-star. He's probably going to end up being a top 10 player in this class after reclassifying, which is insane. And if you go watch the tape, you will see why. This guy is an athletic freak, guys, an athletic freak, 6'4.5", 225 pounds. And he is someone that will step on campus and he will play snaps right away. Do I know if he'll start? I can't answer that question because we do have a lot of talent in that room coming up, but he will play. That's how good he is. And to say that for a guy that's probably only going to turn 18 years old in his first college football game, that is crazy. What Sark can do with this guy, I mean, he could be 1,000-yard receiver at Texas. That's how good he could be. He's that good.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Brock Bowers clone. When you look at his tape, when you watch what he does and how he's built and kind of his game, very much a Brock Bowers clone, or the kid from, I can't remember, the guy from Penn State this past year that
Tyler
played
Warren.
like Tyler Warren played like 15 different positions. I think he even was filling up the water jugs when he was off. Like, dude was just doing everything. And that's the kind of talent that Mark Bowman is. He's a guy who can come in and do whatever he wants. He's a wide receiver in a tight end's body in a lot of ways, but also he can also block. He can block and be an inline guy because of his size and his hands and his skill set. There's not much I could say about Bowman that hasn't already been said by people who are way smarter than me, but like, this would be a game changer for Texas. And Texas is already recruiting at a really elite level. And this would just be one of those continued validations that Texas is back and where they should be.
Well, and if you look at the cycle, I think it's funny. You get Jatavian Sanders. He has a really good year. And we're like, man, can we get better? Gunnar Helm has a better year. I think Jack Entries is going to come in here and have a better year than Gunnar Helm. And then if this guy comes on campus, we're talking about a cycle where it just continues to get better, where you go from like 4th round to 3rd round, I believe Gunnar Helm was. Then you could probably get a 2nd or 1st round pick. And then Mark Bowman, if you just keep him honestly the same and really don't do much with him, he's probably going to be a 1st round pick just based off measurables. So that'd be crazy. I do think it's going to come down to, like you said, Brock Bowers. I think Georgia's going to pitch the hell out of that. I think they're going to throw on the tape and say, that's you, come here. So I think you're going to have to worry about them. I also think you're going to have to worry about USC in this recruitment because of the home factor. And then I think Texas. I think those are going to end up being his final 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't love that Oregon, USC, and Georgia all get visits after Texas, right? I think he's visiting Texas the first week of June, and those other 3 get cracks at him after. Oregon's going to throw a bag because that's what Oregon's doing, and no shade at them, right? USC, hometown favorite. Again, they're going to be able to recruit really well. If you want guys like Bowman to end up at Texas, and we'll talk about this a little bit more with a guy on the defensive side, you want USC to have a really bad year. You want him to want to get away from home a bit. But yeah, Georgia is the one that, they had Brock Bowers, right? You put that teach tape on, and that's how it goes. I really do think probably Georgia and Oregon's always a threat because Phil Knight wants a championship before he dies. So, like, they're going to pony up what they need. And again, that's not a shot. That's just how life works. But Bowman's going to get paid wherever he goes. I said it before and I'll say it again. So, like, if Texas really wants him and it's a money situation, I don't imagine that they lose in that debate. So I think it's going to be all the other things that come into play.
Yeah, and I know they're from Texas originally, and his dad has been saying, like, to him, go to Texas, go to Texas. He's been saying to guys on Texas football and stuff like that, hey, we want him to go to Texas. But, I mean, they're going to let him make his decision as they should. So the parents want him there. So that does help a little bit. Next up, we'll talk about Samuel Rosenborough, 134th nationally offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman, 7 in the country, 6'5", 285 pounds from Florida. But I believe his mom relocated to Texas, so that does help Texas in the recruiting here. What do you see from him?
Yeah, so this profile, right? We talked about it with Krempin, like typical interior offensive line, 6'5", just a shade under a couple, picnic basket under 300 pounds, really long arms, really good feet, really versatile. Unlike Mark Bowman, Texas gets the last visit for this kid, which I really, really like. And again, this is one where Texas can go into Florida, into deep SEC country, and grab one of the most coveted guys, right? Because he's got A&M, Ohio State, Florida State are all have visits scheduled. But Texas gets that one on the 20th, that last pivotal one in that visit window. And so Texas being able to get that last word in makes me feel really good about it. Again, I think this is going to be a 4 or 5 offensive lineman class. And I think Rosenborough is when Texas wants to be in that number. He's a guy who I think could come in and play early if he needs to. He probably won't have to based upon how Texas has recruited. But I think if they're pressed into service early, he's one that I think has a really natural skill set and fit that he could jump in and play some snaps at guard if his number gets called.
No, I agree. And I see him again, like you just said, Zayden Krempin. I think they're kind of similar. And I think he could probably be a little bit of a tweener as well. And I think he's going to go to Texas. I really do. I think all signs to me have been pointing to that. I could be wrong, but everything that I'm hearing, there's a silent commit, and it's someone from Florida. And I think it's him because he's been somewhat high on Texas since the beginning, since we started talking about him like 3 or 4 months ago. So I think he does end up at Texas. And I think what you said too, we get the last visit. we usually nail the last visit. Like Steve Sarkisian has done a tremendous job. Those guys usually commit right after they visit if it's the last
Yeah.
visit. So I do think he ends up at Texas, and it's a really big get because I agree. I think the offensive line and the linebacker class have to be big this year because of the guys leaving the program. Like, again, this is the last big year for Texas on the offensive line. All these guys will basically be gone after this year. So I think it's really big to get someone like Samuel Rosenborough, also like a John Turntine, Felix Ojo. We've talked about those guys as well. So I would love to add him to the class.
Yeah, I saw him. I watched his tape. I saw what he's about. Get him. Do whatever you need to.
Now, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Luke Waffley, I believe his name, from New Jersey. Again, up in the East Coast area. New Jersey produces good football players as well. 6'5", 245 pounds, 55th nationally, number 6 edge in the country. This is a guy that's probably going to be a top 45, top 40 player by the time it's all said and done. Maybe a 5-star, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as he ends up at Texas. What do you think about this guy?
Yeah, I think he's everything you want from an edge rusher, right? Long arms, 6'6", can bend the edge really, really well. Just an elite athlete, right? You don't get to be a top 50 player in the country basically without being that kind of guy. I love his tape. He's physical, he's aggressive, he's really like he's mean and nasty. And I don't mean that as a bad. I think it's good, right? He's a defender. He wants to do that. He really loves attacking the quarterback. Texas, this is another one gets the last visit for him on June 20th. I don't love that Penn State is in the mix. Penn State recruits that region really well. His brother plays at Penn State, right? So like those are things that you have to keep in your back pocket. But ultimately, I love that Texas is in on these guys, even if they don't land all of them. Texas being in this final grouping, getting that June 20th visit, big for Texas, getting in the conversation for these guys. And he's likely going to be on a visit with a bunch of guys that are already committed or getting ready to commit to Texas. So there's something to be said about those guys getting in your ear and wanting to have a spot. So I think he's a guy that is very much in the realm of possibility for Texas. And I think his skill set is somebody who can come in. He's not going to be, I think, as instantly impactful as Colin Simmons was a year ago, but think maybe like 25% back from there, which would be an incredible freshman performance from a kid.
Yeah, it would. And, edge is one of those positions too. We're probably going to need someone because Trey Moore's probably going to be gone. Brad Spence, good chance he's gone as well. Ethan Burke could be gone. So these young guys that we do recruit in this class probably could get some early playing time. And I think this is a guy that could definitely do that. Again, you mentioned it. It's going to be hard to pull him away from Penn State. If your brother's already there, you're from that area, you get to stay close to home. I mean, that is a long flight from New Jersey to Austin, Texas. Not a very long flight from New Jersey to Happy Valley, Penn State. So I think he probably ends up there, but it is cool to have, in the top 6 of these guys, we're listed as one of them. Eventually you're going to land someone from up there, and it's going to, if that guy has a really good experience, it's, again, expanding the map, allow you to enter these places where you really haven't been before. Mac Brown really didn't even get to these places. Tom Herman definitely didn't get into these places. Charlie Strong didn't get into these places. So it's really cool to see that we're in a top 5, top 6, top 7 for these guys. And he's a really, really good player. When we talked about Lance Jackson coming to Texas and he's, 6'6", 275, this guy needs 30 pounds and he's basically Lance Jackson. So puts on that weight, he's almost all ready to go. And I bet he puts 10 pounds on by the time he gets to wherever he's going to go. So he's ready to go as soon as he gets on campus.
Yeah, and again, like I mentioned, don't discount Texas having that last visit, right? That is always the wild card, regardless of where people are and where things are at. And his brother is already transferred, but I think he's probably lined up. He could be lined up for a grad transfer situation if he decides that, both parents want them to play in Texas, whatever it is, that drive from New Jersey. I was in New Jersey for work a few weeks ago, and that drive to Pennsylvania is not far at all. So you don't even need to get on a plane to get there if you don't want to. So that's like the big one that worries me. But again, that last visit, June 20th, get him on campus, get him excited, seal the deal there, let the other players chatter in his ear and see what falls out.
Next up, Chance Calicut. This is a guy I thought was going to go to Texas from the beginning. I think he's going to end up at Texas. We are in his final 3. It's Georgia, Michigan, Texas. I just think he ends up there. I had a read on this guy for a while now. I think he ends up at Texas. From everything I've seen on his Twitter, from everything that I've seen talked about him, and he's a hell of a player. 161st nationally, 6'3", 190 pounds, 4-star. long, rangy athlete, which is exactly what you want in this type of defense, which is exactly what you want on the safety. Likes to come up, be a little bit physical, which again, I would rather you have to learn ball skills than, learn physicality, because I don't think you can really learn physicality. I think you're kind of born with it and then develop into it as a football player. But I think he's a really good all-around football player at the safety position.
Yeah, like you said, big, physical. This is more of that prototypical, right? We talked about Yaheem Riley, who's a little bit smaller. Like this guy is a guy who fits the bill physically, both with his play and with his body style. Michigan is the one that worries me, I think, in this one a little bit, because they get that last visit. I keep talking about that, but Texas, in there, that second to last week is also really nice for them. He's just your prototype safety. Like there's no two ways around it. He's a guy who, when you look at, you put a guy in the lab, like this is kind of the kind of guy that comes out. And I love that, Texas is trying to keep their claws in at North Shore. North Shore has been, a Sour Patch Kid sometimes when it comes to recruiting in Texas. Sometimes things are really good. Sometimes things are really terrible. And so I think, Texas not giving up on one of the big talent schools in the country, or in the state, but in the country as well. Like, I think it's great for them. Keep chopping wood, keep trying to get them on campus. Texas is really big game hunting in this defensive class, right? All these guys we're talking about are top like 150, 175-ish guys with some big names on the board, and he's another one of those.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that could probably play right away at Texas, like a little bit in the rotation. I don't think he's a starter right away, but I definitely think he can come and be in the rotation of, the 4 to 5 safeties that we like to rotate throughout the year. I do think he's a little bit too long to play in the slot. I think you're kind of wasting him there if you put him in there, honestly. I think he's definitely a safety. Maybe, if he has good enough ball skills, you can even slide him out and play cornerback a little bit, but I think he's mostly a safety at Texas.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way and the physicality of his play, I think really fits. I think of like how Texas likes their safeties to be really violent, and think of what Andrew Makuba and what Mookie does in that safety spot, right? You really want those guys to be physical, just coming downhill in run support, slapping defenders as hard as they can, or slapping offensive players as hard as they can. So I really think, based on his play, based on his size, I see he's slotting in at safety.
Next up, but definitely not the least, Xavier Griffin from Georgia. This is a top 27 or top 30 player nationally. 247, I think, has him as like a top 15 player nationally. This is a guy that's number 8. Okay, yeah, so even higher. Yeah, he's a hell of a football player. USC gets these guys every year where they commit, but they actually don't want to go to USC because, let's be honest here, Georgia to California is a long flight, and because USC has been down. So, Justice Terry, now at Texas, was once committed to USC a long time ago in the spring, came to his senses, decided not to go there. Xavier Griffin has kind of done the same thing, and Texas gets a visit from him, and it's big dogs. It's Georgia, it's Alabama, it's Texas. So we'll see if we can win this one. This guy, 6'3", 200 pounds, and I think the perfect comp for him is Jihad Campbell. I think he can play off the edge. I think he can play inside, and he can just create havoc wherever he plays on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, when I pulled up his tape and when I pulled up his profile, it lists him as a linebacker, but he's an edge. Like, he's an edge rusher through and through. And you could see that Texas views him as an edge and as a defensive lineman, because Alan Clark and Kenny Baker are his 2 primary recruiters, right? So like, those are the defensive line coaches. They're not the linebacker coaches. Yeah. Like, there's no 2 ways around. So I think Texas views him as an edge. And I think he's a guy who can make a ton of money as an edge. He's aggressive. He likes to play in the backfield. He's very, very violent. He's a guy who likes to create those kind of explosive plays, those catalytic plays. He loves to find a ball carrier and just ruin their afternoon. And I love seeing that. And again, he's a guy we mentioned, he's a Georgia kid. He's a kid who's from deep SEC country. One of those guys that, if the Georgia staff had their way, they would not ever leave the state. But, Texas is getting that weekend visit, the 13th, not the last weekend, but they're close. That second to last weekend's good for them as well. Bama and Ohio State are the 2 big ones there. I hate recruiting against James Laurinaitis. Like, I hate recruiting against that guy. He's such a good recruiter. I hate how good Ohio State is at having their former players come in and be recruiters. The same thing goes for Brian Hartline. It's on site with him. Stay out of Austin, you bum. Like, get out of here, dude. But like, Laurinaitis does a really great job recruiting these edge rushers, and they do a really great job. Like, they develop the heck out of them, right? You saw what Ohio State was able to do against Texas in the college football playoff. And so Xavier Griffin, I would love to have him in Austin. I think Ohio State is the one that really concerns me in this recruitment, but he is a prototypical edge, can come off the edge, disrupt something, and really be a day one contributor for Texas. He's that type of special.
No, 100%. He's a guy that could definitely play right away. And even, I mean, if he impresses enough, he could probably start right away. Like, that's how good he could be. It's interesting to me, like 2 days after all this, he was crystal balled to Alabama. So is there something already going on behind the scenes of, hey, I'm going to take visits elsewhere, but I am going to come to Alabama, because it was like 2 days right after he decommits from USC. We'll have to see. Then again, crystal balls don't really mean that much anymore. You see all these guys put them in now, and then they'll be like, an hour before the guy commits, they'll put him in again, because NIL is crazy. You never know what's going to happen. So we'll have to see where he ends up. But the last guy, which just happened today, is going to visit Texas, canceled his Florida State visit. And this is a big one. A top 10 player in the composite, Lamar Brown, defensive lineman from Louisiana. And this is how crazy this guy is. So he's an offensive lineman, played offensive line his whole time in high school. And he's like, nah, I want to play defensive line in college. So it's like, and he's rated this high. So that tells you what kind of freak athlete this guy is. And if you go look on 247 and how they describe him, it's all based on offensive line, because that's all he's played. It's like good hips, good mobility. Well, guess what? He's not really going to be a lot of those things do translate. A lot of them don't, though, from the defensive to the or offensive to the defensive line position. What do you think about this guy?
Yeah, when I pulled up his profile, I laughed. He goes to University Lab High School, and he was like made in a lab to play edge rusher, right? Like, that's just what or I say edge rusher, like maybe that like 5 technique, kind of that, wherever Texas slides him in. But he's a guy who really, like, he's a freak. There's no two ways around it. I talked about, I think last week, I love defenders that look like the Predator on the field, just like long, lanky arms, kind of, but they're moving swiftly. They're way swifter than somebody that body size should, way smoother than somebody that body size should be. I mean, there's a reason why he's a top 10 player universally across the board. I think it's going to be really tough sledding against LSU and A&M. When you got a kid from Baton Rouge, generally it's either LSU or A&M. They recruit that area really, really well. But again, he's coming to Texas. He decided that, he wanted to take a visit, and anytime Texas gets him on campus, they've got a puncher's chance, because the experience they have on campus is second to none. The opportunity to show them, hey, here's what we're going to do with you. Hey, look at Colin Simmons, see what he did. You could be that in a year, right? That's where you could be. So Texas has a lot to sell this kid. And this would be a huge recruiting win. Again, if you really want this one to go Texas's way, you need LSU to suck this year. You need A&M to suck this year, because I think he's a kid that's also going to want to join a winner, just based upon things I've seen and read from him. So, like, if LSU is not great this year, things are going to get weird for Brian Kelly in Baton Rouge. And again, A&M, they do great with defensive linemen, but if they're not good again, I think things are going to get weird in College Station for their coaching staff as well. So this is one you really, even if you didn't have enough incentive to cheer against LSU and A&M, here's some more incentive to do that.
Well, and I also think, this is the type of guy where if Brian Kelly's on the fence of being fired and you don't land someone like this will push him over the edge to get fired, because like you said, they don't really lose people out of their backyard like this. When the guy's a top 25, top 30 player and he's from Louisiana, they usually end up at LSU, because they are brainwashed to go to LSU. Like, every school in that every school in that state is a Tiger. Every school in that state is purple and gold. So this guy, since he was 7 years old playing football, that's all he's seen around him. So if LSU's any good, they usually want to end up there. So he's that good to where they could fire someone over that. Dylan Berryman is another guy like that as well. And at Texas, I believe he's getting a visit with him as well. So, and that's the thing too about Lamar Brown. I thought it was funny. I saw On3 release athlete visits Texas, and I look at the picture. I'm like, this dude is an athlete. He's gigantic. Why is he listed as an athlete? And then you come to know, he plays offensive line, but he wants to play defensive line. So I'm like, yeah, that's just crazy to me. He's probably the biggest athlete I've ever seen listed on any site.
Yeah, I mean, he's like athlete because they don't know where he's going to project, right? But it's somewhere in the trenches. Either way. Again, this is one of those, you get him on campus and you sort it out later, right? You just figure it out as Texas does. So again, there's no two ways to say this other than, like, it's going to be tough to beat LSU in this one, but getting him on campus, getting him to schedule a visit, anything can happen, right? I wish it was a later visit. I wish it was the 13th that next week or even the 20th, 2 weeks later, but I will take getting this kid on campus, let the coaches get in his ear, and maybe they bring him in for one of these smaller visit weekends to, hopefully give him some more one-on-one attention and show him exactly how much Texas values him.
No, I agree. I think he should get like the Michael Fasusi getting a picture with Sark in the SUV type treatment. So we'll see if they give him that. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Also, if you want to sponsor anyone on the Voice of College Football Network, it does not have to be this show. It can be any show on the network. Please hit us up at sponsorships@vocfb.com. It really helps us out. As you see on the screen, we have the Win agency who sponsors the Michigan channel. Get your business, product, service, or personal brand to the next level by partnering with the Voice of College Football. Let's discuss how you can also reach your target market audience. Sponsorships@vocfb.com today. We really appreciate that. Also, guys, check out the Instagram channel. Our Instagram page for the Voice of College Football. Just type in the Voice of College Football on Instagram. Give us a follow. The content will keep churning out. We'll talk about recruiting, obviously, and then the season's almost less than 100 days away, so we'll obviously be posting about stuff like that. And when the season gets into full force, you'll have a lot of stuff over there. And then type or in on Google, Voice of College Football. Go over there, read articles, look at recent posts over there. It really helps out grow the college football or Voice of College Football Network. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It does not cost anything to do that. It is free. It really helps out the channel, and we really appreciate you guys when you do that. Also, check out the Amazon link in the description. It is free. It does not cost anything, and we really appreciate when you guys do that and use it. It just puts a little bit of change into Mark Rogers' pocket, so we always appreciate that, guys. Next up, we're going to talk about Texas and the red zone. This has been an issue for 2 years now in Texas. It has gotten worse every year under Stark. It was great his first year here. I believe we were in the top 15 in the country. Then we fell back to somewhere in between the 30s and 40s. Then it was, I think, 88th or 89th 2 years ago. And then last year, we're all thinking, hey, it can't be any worse. It's got to get better. It was 111th in the country last year. And guys, we all saw how the Ohio State game ended. I thought it was very poetic. It ended that way because that is the thing that held this team back to get to the heights that it could have. So let's talk about that, Gerald. How do you think Texas's red zone offense will be better this year? And number two, why do you think that if it will be?
Yeah, I like want to knock on wood or something and say like it has to be better, right? Like I think if Texas is going to achieve its goals for the year and achieve its goals overall, that it has to be better, right? There are folks that are picking Texas to win the national championship, right? The Athletic or On Three just put out Ari Wasserman just put out his college football playoff preview, had Texas winning the national championship there, right? If Texas is going to reach those high tech, if Texas is even going to just be nationally relevant, they have to be able to do this, right? It's something that they're going to have to do to be able to. So I'm going to say yes, and I have legitimate reasons for that, other than just like vibes and like have tos, right? But ultimately, like this is going to be, I think, a true test for Sark. Like, can he solve that problem? Because if you look at the difference in year to year, I think you can identify somebody, specific two players left the offense, and Texas had a massive drop off in their red zone projection, right? Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson left. Texas had a drop off. That was a little bit of a band-aid for Sark there. Now, I will say, I do think Texas is going to be better. I think the first reason is because CJ Baxter should be healthy, right? CJ Baxter coming back has the ability to do that. As much as again, I feel like I dump on Trey Wisner a lot, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but like Trey Wisner is not a red zone back by nature. Based on his size, based on his skill set, that's not what Trey Wisner does. Now, I say it every time I talk about this. Trey Wisner should never have to buy another drink in Austin. He should never pay for dinner, never have to buy another drink in Austin based on what that kid has done. 3-star kid, came in, gave Texas 1,000 yards rushing, kept the offense moving even when he shouldn't have, was slated to be RB3 coming into the year and was a 1,000-yard rusher for Texas. But he's not a red zone rusher. He's not a short yard rusher. CJ Baxter has the body style to be a 3-down guy, and that is what he's going to do for Texas, right? The other piece of that is that I think teams are going to have to respect the legs of Arch Manning. I don't think Texas is going to be a heavy QB run team, but having Arch Manning on a bootleg in the red zone is going to draw some eyes, right? The linebacker that's covering your tight end that's coming across on a drag route is going to have some bad eye discipline because he has to keep his eyes in the backfield to make a play potentially on Arch Manning. And if he doesn't do that, then Arch will tuck the ball and run and dive for the pylon, right? If he does, then the tight end, who we already know has the potential to be better than he was a year ago, right, is going to slip out and catch a pass in the back corner of the end zone. It's like there are two things that I think get CJ Baxter coming back, Arch Manning's legs. You're going to have to respect them as a defender in the red zone. I think both of those things are going to be big boons for Texas.
No, I agree. I think we'll be better. Do I think we're going to get to what we were? I believe Steve Sarkisian's even first or second year, which I think second year, like I said, we were somewhere between 30 and 40. No, I think we're probably going to rank in the 40 to 50 range is my guess. Because that'd be a gigantic jump. If you're jumping like 90, 100 spots to jump back up to what you were a couple years ago. But I mean, if you can just be average, this team can win a national championship because again, if they were average last year, they probably would have won the national championship or at least got there. So it's something that's been holding this team back the last 2 years. We saw it, guys, we've seen it 2 years in a row now. We saw Texas have 4 plays from the Washington 12-yard line, not able to score. We saw Texas have 4 plays from the Ohio State one, then get pushed back because of a bad play call and not be able to score. In fact, Ohio State scored on that. So it's something that needs to get better. It has to get better. It's something that has, kind of plagued Sark throughout his career because with the Atlanta Falcons, that was his issue too. He was able to move the ball in the 20s, but once he got in the red zone, that was an issue. And the thing is that when Alabama won it with him as the offensive coordinator, that team had a lot more big play capability. They weren't great in the red zone. They were good enough. So hopefully Texas, that can help too. If they're just hitting those 50, 60-yard bombs for touchdowns, then you don't need to be as good as in the red zone. I do expect that to happen a little bit more this year because of Arch Manning's arm strength. And you have, I think, better athletes at the wide receiver position overall with like a Parker Livingstone, who's really fast. Ryan Wingo's got some speed to him. I think Jack Endries is a better athlete also than Gunnar Helm. So I think that will help. But at the end of the day, the stat that I think people, and I made a video about this halfway through the year, 4.4 yards per carry. That's not going to get it done. That was 64th in the country, and that has a lot to do with the red zone production, number one. And then number two is Sark has to stick to something. We saw Sark in the Red River game a couple years ago versus Oklahoma. Well, we bring in that jumbo package, we run it twice, and then he says, no, we're going to throw a screen. I would have rather that play happen, the jumbo package, 4 times in a row. At least bang your head into the wall and say, you know what, this is either going to work or it's not. Instead of, it seems like at times he's experimenting in the red zone, like, maybe this will work. Let's throw this out there. Maybe this will work. Let's throw this out there. Instead of having a plan when he gets down there of what to do. So I think in the offseason, I'm hoping he came up like a formula of honestly 5 to 7 plays that you can just execute really well and run those in certain sequences because I think that would work. So hopefully that happens. If not, I agree. I think Arch Manning will help out a little bit on the bootlegs, or if you just decide to run him, like in the Ohio State game, you're probably just going QB sneak on the 1-yard line with Arch Manning if he's your quarterback. So I think you could see that. I also think Jack Endries helps. He's more athletic than Gunnar Helm, so he can win in tight spaces. I also think he can jump a little bit better than Gunnar Helm. So, if you want to put him out wide one-on-one and throw a jump ball, I'd be fine with that too. Obviously, that is not a recipe for success to throw 4 fades. We kind of saw that with A.D. Mitchell in the Washington game. We threw that like 2 or 3 times. And he caught one of them, and he had to double clutch on that. So unless you have a freak like him, it's going to be hard to do. But overall, it has to be better. I do think it's going to be better. I'm just not sure how much better it's going to be.
Yeah, you mentioned Endries and Archie's feet. I wonder, and this is something I wanted to see last year as well in that Arch Manning package, is like that Tim Tebow style, like pop pass where you take 2 steps, step back and jump, kind of throw it, that jump pass. I'd love to see something like that. And I will say, like, we have to put like an asterisk on the Ohio State game because, correct me if I'm wrong, Texas had a touchdown or should have had a touchdown that was wiped off via Ohio State penalty. I believe they had to grab a guy to keep him from scoring or being wide open. So like, Sark did draw up a touchdown play in there, and then Ohio State had to cheat to keep them from doing that. But neither here nor there. You should have to run a toss play on the goal line. The toss play was the differentiator there. If you have CJ Baxter, you have Arch Manning's legs, you have Jack Endries, like you mentioned, that tight end. I think you have some guys who can catch. The cat that they just signed from Stanford is another guy who likes to catch an end zone fade in that back corner. So I think there's options there. Again, knock on wood, Texas has to be better in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it could get any worse from 2 years ago when we were ranked 89th, or no, we were ranked 90th and Iowa was ranked 89th. So I thought, you can't get much worse than that. Because remember, 2 years ago, I was like one of the worst offensive teams in the history of college football. And then last year
Yeah.
we were 111th. So it got worse. So,
Ugh.
I mean, really, unless you're ranked last this year, it can't get much worse. So I'm hoping we finally fix it.
Fingers crossed, man.
Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel, what we're trying to build. We are here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I haven't decided yet. Me and Jared will talk. We haven't talked about this. We'll be here next Monday because it is Memorial Day. But if not, maybe we'll find a day, do it a different day. But usually 99% of the time, we're here 8 p.m. Monday. So we really appreciate you guys checking us out. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Also, check me out on Twitter right there. That is my handle. And then check Gerald out on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. That's his handle, as well as his podcast, which same as the Voice of College Football, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, iHeartRadio. You can find it anywhere you want. Just type it in. We really appreciate you guys being here. And again, guys, this has been the 53rd edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you guys being here, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.